This GTX 1050 looks great, but can it perform in games? I picked up this custom painted NVIDIA GTX 1050 recently and wanted to see if it could game well. So I started off in Jedi Survivor, 1080p low settings, to see what it could do. And it did not do well. 18 frames per second average with 1% lows of 5. So I dropped the resolution down to 720p and we saw a good improvement up to 26 frames per second, 1% lows of 12. Definitely not the most playable experience, but you could get by if you weren't too picky. Then I moved on to Cyberpunk 2077 at low settings, 1080p, and it got 22 frames per second average, but the 1% lows were just killing it. So I dropped it down to 720p and we saw an increase up to 32 FPS average, but the 1% lows hardly moved. They went up to 8 frames per second, so I wouldn't really call this an enjoyable experience. The graphics card is staying quite cool though, at just 56 degrees Celsius. Then I moved on to Modern Warfare 2 at the minimum settings 1080p, and we were able to get 53 frames per second average with 1% lows of 29. This was definitely playable despite my poor skills. So if you were to have a 1050, you could probably play this game and do all right if you weren't looking to do competitive gaming. Moving on to Red Dead Redemption 2 at 720p settings with medium graphics, we were able to get a decent 38 frames per second average and 1% lows of 26. The game actually looks pretty good, and I would consider this a playable experience. We are seeing the graphics card heat up in this game up to 68 degrees. Then of course had to test Rocket League out, where we got 126 frames per second, which is not too bad. The issue is with the 1% lows of 43. This is a common experience we saw across multiple games. What do you think? Is a GTX 1050 worth gaming on?